Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're doing something a little bit different for you.
Yeah, we are.
We're putting on our conductor hats today, or maybe maybe more accurately, our black ski masks and those respirators, because we are looking at what might be the single most pivotal 60 minutes in modern television history.
It really is.
We are talking about Breaking Bad, and specifically, we are dissecting Season 5, Episode 5.
Dead Freight. Just saying, the title feels heavier.
It really does. It's one of those things where if you know the show, you hear that title, and you probably get a physical reaction to it.
Like a knot in your stomach.
Exactly. A shiver, a knot. It is completely infamous.
It is arguably one of the most intense hours of television ever produced. Because it starts as this high-adventure, almost boyish caper.
Like a classic Western heist.
Exactly. A classic train robbery. And it ends as a full-blown Greek tragedy.
It completely pulls the rug out from under you. And our mission today is to unpack exactly how this episode manages to do that. We aren't just going to recap the plot for you. We want to look at the machinery under the hood.
Right, the mechanics of it.
We want to understand how the writers and the director balance this incredible technical ingenuity, the heist itself, with just absolute moral devastation.
And we have a really fantastic stack of sources to help us navigate this with you today. We are looking at the detailed plot summaries, obviously, to track the narrative.
Or roadmap.
Right. But we're also digging into production notes regarding the extreme challenges of filming this absolute beast of an episode. Plus, we've got critical reception from the time it aired back in 2012 and the specific award nominations this hour of TV actually garnered.
So we have the full picture here, from the camera lenses all the way down to the character psychology.
We do, and we are going to see exactly why this matters, because on the surface, it really is just a train robbery.
The great train robbery with a chemistry twist.
Right, exactly. But beneath that, it is the exact moment where the fun officially stops.
Yeah. It is the point of no return. You can almost draw a line in the sand of the entire series. There is before this episode, and there is after this episode.
It contains what is widely considered one of the most shocking pivots in the history of the show. So, buckle up. It's going to be a very bumpy ride.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the setup, because before we get to the trains and the hoses and the adrenaline, we really have to understand the desperation that drives them there in the first place.
And it starts, interestingly enough, in an office.
Yeah, it starts with Walter White visiting his brother-in-law, Hank Schrader. But this isn't a social call. This is Walt on a very specific mission.
No, absolutely not a social call. And the context here for you to remember is crucial. Hank has just been promoted.
He's the ASEC now.
Right, the assistant special agent in charge. He is at his brand new DEA office.
Yeah.
It's a massive position of power. And Walt walks in, and he plays this scene.
While calling it a performance almost feels like an understatement.
It really does. He puts on a complete show. The source material describes Walt literally feigning tears. He sits down in the DEA office and just starts crying about his failing marriage to Skylar.
It is a masterclass in manipulation.
It is. But it is also a masterclass in reading people. Because think about who Hank is. He's a tough guy. He's a DEA agent. He's a man's man in that very traditional, slightly toxic sense of the word.
Right, he doesn't do feelings.
He absolutely does not. So he sees another man crying, especially his brother-in-law, and he just doesn't know what to do with himself. He gets physically uncomfortable.
It's like kryptonite to him. He just wants to run away.
He wants to flee the room. He is looking for literally any exit.
He goes to get coffee, doesn't he? That's his excuse.
Yes. He says he's going to get Walt some coffee. He leaves the room to give Walt a moment. Or really to just escape the sheer awkwardness of witnessing male vulnerability. And this is what fascinates me the most.
Yeah.
The literal second Hank is out the door.
The tears turn off.
Like a light switch. It is instantaneous. His face goes from this contorted, sobbing, emotional mess to absolute stone-cold focus.
And Walt goes to work. He is not there to cry. He is there to bug the office.
He installs covert listening devices. 2 of them, according to the plot summary. He puts one on the computer to capture keystrokes or audio near the screen, and then he plants another one inside a picture frame sitting right on top of Hank's desk.
That is just incredibly bold. I mean, planting a bug in the head of the DEA's office while he is down the hall getting you coffee.
It's so risky.
Yeah.
But what really stands out to me here is the total weaponization of vulnerability. Walt knows Hank loves him. He knows Hank cares deeply about his family.
And he uses that.
He uses that love, that empathy, as the literal distraction to plant a bug that will help him run a drug empire.
It is chilling. It just shows you how far gone Walt is at this point. He is using his crumbling marriage, which is crumbling entirely because of him, by the way, as a prop.
A tactical prop.
He is turning his own massive failures into a tactical advantage.
Precisely. It is pure predatory behavior. He is using Hank's core humanity against him. So now they have ears on the DEA. And that becomes immediately relevant because of what we can call the Lydia problem.
Ah, yes. Lydia Rodarte-Quayle. The nervous, incredibly jittery executive from Magical Electromotive. She is a handful.
To put it mildly, yes.
Hmm.
So the crew, Walt, Jesse Pinkman, and Mike Ehrmantraut, they have a major issue on their hands.
Yeah.
They found a tracking device.
Right. It was stuck on the bottom of a methylamine barrel from one of the magical warehouses.
And the immediate assumption, specifically coming from Mike and Walt, is that Lydia planted it. They think she is panicked, she is trying to get out of the game, or she is trying to set them up to save her own skin. They view her as a complete loose cannon.
So they bring her to the basement. It is framed as an interrogation, but let's be real here. Mike is totally ready to wrap this up permanently.
It is much more than an interrogation. It is essentially a preemptive execution. Mike and Walt are ready to kill her. The decision has basically already been made in their heads. She is a liability. And in their world, when someone becomes a liability, they disappear.
But Jesse hesitates.
Jesse is the moral compass here, surprisingly enough, or maybe not surprisingly, given his whole character arc. He's not convinced she did it. He thinks they might be rushing to judgment.
So what do they do to prove it? This is where those bugs come in, right?
Exactly. They force her to make a phone call. They use those listening devices Walt just planted in Hank's office. They make Lydia call Hank directly to report the discovery of the tracker while they listen in on Hank's end to see his real-time reaction.
That is an insanely high-stakes phone call. You have to imagine being Lydia in that moment.
Terrifying.
You have Mike staring at you, probably holding a gun just out of frame, and you have to sound completely natural on the phone with the DEA.
Incredibly high stakes for her. Because if Hank reacts like, "Good job, Lydia, we have got them right where we want them," or if he reveals she is an informant, she is dead before she even hangs up the receiver. But they listen to the follow-up. They eavesdrop on Hank's next phone call right after he hangs up with Lydia.
And what exactly do they hear?
They hear Hank calling his own team. They learn the tracker was actually planted by a completely different DEA team down in Houston. Lydia had absolutely nothing to do with it. She was telling the truth the whole time.
So she is exonerated.
She is exonerated of treachery, yes. But she is definitely not safe.
Right, because now she is quote-unquote useless.
Exactly. And in this particular criminal underworld, being useless is just about as bad as being a traitor. Her warehouse is compromised. The DEA is actively watching the barrels. She cannot provide the methylamine anymore. So Mike, being the ultimate cold pragmatist, is still looking at her like a loose end that needs to be tied up.
Why keep her alive if she can't deliver the goods?
Exactly his logic.
This is where it gets really interesting for me. Because Lydia, staring down the barrel of a gun, literally or metaphorically, pulls a massive rabbit out of a hat. She pivots from a victim to an indispensable asset in about 10 seconds flat.
She makes the pitch of her absolute life. She tells them she can access an ocean of methylamine.
An ocean. That is such a powerful image.
That is the exact word she uses. She is not talking about a barrel or two anymore. She completely shifts the conversation from how do we scrape by to how do we get rich forever.
She suggests the train.
A transiting freight train. She has the manifest. She knows the schedule. She knows there is a massive amount of this specific chemical moving across the state on the rails.
Talk about a crazy shift in power dynamics. She goes from being on her knees, begging for her life, to being the grand architect of the biggest heist they have ever attempted.
It is a brilliant display of survival instinct. She realizes that the only way to survive these men like Walt and Mike, is to make herself absolutely indispensable again. And nothing makes you indispensable to Walter White quite like an ocean of methylamine.
But the guys are skeptical, right? I mean, robbing a train, that sounds like something straight out of a Western movie from the 1800s, not a modern drug operation.
They are very skeptical. It seems literally impossible. You can't just stop a massive freight train and loot it without the entire world knowing about it. It is too big, it is too loud, it's too heavily monitored. But this is where the trio, Walt, Jesse, and Mike, really start to function as a brain trust. And specifically, Jesse steps up here.
Jesse is the one who cracks the logistics.
The source notes that with Jesse's motivation, they come up with the actual plan. It is not just about stopping the train. It is about exactly where they stop it. It is about the dark territory.
Ooh, dark territory. That sounds so ominous. It sounds like something from a fantasy novel.
It is a real technical term, but yes, it sets the mood perfectly for the show.
Mhm.
It refers to a stretch of track where there are no signals and no radio communication whatsoever.
A blind spot.
It is a complete blind spot in the system, a dead zone.
So if you were going to rob a train, that is exactly where you do it, out in the dark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the problem isn't just taking the stuff. The problem is the weight. And this brings us to the physics of the heist, which is where the plan usually falls apart in lesser television shows. You
Yeah.
can't just take liquid out and leave the tank car empty
Why not?
because of the industrial scales. When that freight train finally gets to its destination, it gets weighed. If they pump out, say, 1,000 gallons of methylamine, the train is going to be thousands of pounds lighter.
Right. And if the train is light, the company immediately knows a theft occurred in transit.
Exactly. And if they know a theft occurred, they investigate. The heat comes down on everyone, the police get involved, the whole idea of the perfect crime is completely ruined.
So they need a swap. They need to put something back into the tank.
Precisely. They plan to pump out the methylamine and simultaneously pump in water.
Water. Simple enough, right?
Well, not quite simple. This is where the science comes into play.
Yeah.
You can't just swap liquid for liquid strictly by volume. Methylamine and water have very different densities.
Ah, right. Density equals mass over volume.
Look at you, breaking out the high school chemistry equations. Yes. Methylamine is significantly lighter than water. So if you just swap 1,000 gallons of methylamine for 1,000 gallons of water, your train car is suddenly way heavier than it started.
And the scales at the destination will flag that discrepancy, too.
Exactly. So Walt isn't just calculating volume down there in the dirt. He is calculating a complex weight-to-volume ratio on the fly. They have to pump slightly less water in than the methylamine they take out, just to make the mass balance perfectly on the company scale.
Which adds this completely terrifying layer of complexity to the physical act of the robbery. They aren't just turning valves and crossing their fingers. They're adhering to a strict mathematical formula while standing on top of a moving bomb, basically.
It is the stark difference between a common thug robbing a liquor store and a brilliant scientist robbing a multinational corporation.
So the plan is perfectly set. When the train arrives at the destination, the weight is totally correct. No alarms go off.
And that is the absolute brilliance of the plan. It is the perfect crime because, theoretically, no one will ever even know it happened. The chemical company will just think they got a bad batch that was somehow diluted at the factory, or it won't be discovered until it is way too late to track exactly where on the route it happened.
It is intellectual satisfaction at its finest. It is a completely clean job.
Ideally, yes, a clean job. But this job requires more hands than they have. The three of them simply can't do it alone. They need someone to handle the heavy lifting, someone to climb up the tanks and drop the hoses.
They need a crew?
They do. So they bring in a newcomer, Todd Alquist.
Todd.
He is an employee of Vamanos Pest, which is the cover company they have been using for their mobile meth cooks. And he seems very helpful, very polite, very eager to please the bosses.
He has got that real yes, sir, no, sir kind of vibe to him.
He really does. He seems entirely harmless. Just a guy doing a job. But there are strict rules for this operation. Jesse is very, very specific with him before they start.
This is a really critical plot point for you to remember as we go forward. Jesse explicitly tells Todd that no one can ever know.
Nobody ever knows. Total silence, the condition of his employment, the very condition of being allowed on this highly lucrative job is that this must remain a ghost operation. No witnesses.
The stakes are incredibly set. If they pull this off, they are financially set for life. If they fail or if they get caught, it is game over.
High risk, infinite reward.
Before we get to the tracks, though, the episode actually takes a little detour, a domestic detour.
Right. We have to check in on the White household. We can't forget that while Walt is out planning the crime of the century, his actual family life is completely imploding.
We see Walt Jr. returning home.
He's confused. He is angry. He's been staying with Hank and Marie, and he comes back demanding real answers about his parents' separation. He wants to know why he can't just be in his own home. He feels exiled by his own family.
And what does Walt do in response to his son?
Walt plays the father knows best card, but he plays very aggressively. He just orders Junior back to Hank and Marie's house. He doesn't give him an explanation. He just issues a command. It is very authoritarian.
And Skylar, where is she in all this?
Skylar is in a fascinating position here. She informs Walt of her final terms. She has essentially resigned herself to being a money launderer. She realizes she can't stop him, and she knows she can't turn him in without completely destroying the family unit. So she tells him she will keep his secrets, she will wash the cash. But the children stay away. That is her absolute line in the sand.
She's bargaining for their safety.
She is. Walt tries to assure her that there is no danger, which is deeply ironic given he is literally about to go rob a moving freight train. But Schuyler has made up her mind. The source material mentions she firmly believes that one day someone will arrive at their home with the direct intent of harming them.
She is very prescient. She is not wrong about the world he operates in.
She knows the business he is in much better than he thinks she does. She calls their house the blast zone. She wants her kids completely out of the blast zone.
Now, I noticed in the source material that the critical reception to these specific domestic scenes was, well, kind of mixed.
Yeah, that is a really interesting point. Donna Bowman from the AV Club, who gave the episode a great rating overall, she called these family scenes clumsily functional.
Clumsily functional. That is a bit of a backhanded compliment from a critic. What does that actually mean in this context?
It implies that they felt a bit mechanical to watch. Like the writers just needed to move the chess pieces around on the board, they needed to get the kids out of the house, establish the new tense status quo between Walt and Schuyler, all just to set up future episodes. Compared to the high-octane train heist that follows, these scenes felt a bit like necessary housekeeping.
I can definitely see that. It is like the show saying, okay, we get it, the family's messed up, now let's get back to the cool heist stuff.
Exactly. But I would argue they are absolutely vital to the thematic core of the show. They remind you that Walt isn't doing this for the family anymore. He is doing it despite the family. He is actively pushing his own son away to clear the decks for his criminal ambition.
That is a really great point. It strips away all of his noble excuses. Okay, so the family is stashed away safely. Let's go out to the train tracks. Part 4, the execution.
The setup out in the desert is incredibly elaborate. They need to stop the train, but they can't just hijack it with guns drawn. That leaves witnesses, which violates the core rule. They need the train to stop naturally.
Enter Patrick Kuby.
Played by the absolutely hilarious Bill Burr.
Yes, he is so good in this. He is driving a dump truck.
A broken-down dump truck. Heavy air quotes on broken down. He parks it right on a dirt crossing directly on the tracks. He creates a physical blockade.
And he sells it so well. The acting within the acting here is just great television.
He sells it perfectly. The massive train comes around the bend. The engineer sees the truck blocking the path, and they have to screech to a complete halt.
And the engineer and the conductor?
They do exactly what decent, normal people would do. They exit the locomotive to check on the guy to see if they can help move the truck off the tracks. They are annoyed, sure, because they are on a schedule, but they aren't suspicious of foul play. Kuby keeps them completely distracted with his whole, this piece of junk truck routine. He plays the fool beautifully.
And while they're distracted at the front of the train,
The mechanics go in motion at the back. It is a highly synchronized dance. Mike is the dedicated lookout, hidden away in the brush. Walt, Jesse, and Todd are at the tank cars.
and they have to do two critical things at the exact same time.
Right. They are draining the methylamine from the train's tanker car down into an empty tank they have pre-buried underground. At the exact same time, they are pumping water from a separate water tank back up into the train car.
It is a complete plumbing nightmare.
It really is. And remember, this is physically demanding work. They are out in the desert heat, hauling heavy industrial hoses, forcefully turning rusted valves, constantly watching the pressure meters.
And the production notes we have mentioned this wasn't easy to film either.
No, it was a massive challenge. George Mastras, the writer and director of the episode, noted that this was logistically incredibly complicated to pull off. They needed many cameras running simultaneously to capture the sheer scale of the operation. They even used GoPros buried down in the dirt to get those really kinetic low angles. And here's a fun fact from the source. The actual train they rented for the shoot broke down on the very first day of filming.
No way. You are kidding me.
Life imitating art. The train sequence took 4 full days to shoot out in the desert, and you can really feel that physical effort on screen. The sweat on the actors looks real, because it probably was real. It is hot, it is dusty, it is loud.
So the pumping is happening. The fluid levels are actively changing. Kuby is successfully stalling the engineers up front. It is incredibly tense, but it is working.
Until it isn't.
The crisis. There is always a crisis in this show.
There is always a variable you just can't predict. And in this specific case, it is a good Samaritan.
A random passerby.
Just a guy in a pickup truck driving up the dirt road. He sees the broken down dump truck and decides to get out and help push it off the tracks.
Which is a massive problem because Kuby needs that truck on the tracks to keep the train stopped.
Exactly. If the truck moves, the train engineers get back in and the train leaves. And the hoses are still physically connected to the tank car. If the train moves with the hoses connected, it rips all the equipment apart, spills toxic chemicals everywhere, and probably kills Walt and Jesse in the process.
Mike sees this happening from his lookout post.
And Mike, being the seasoned professional that he is, makes the definitive call. He radios down to Walt and says, "Abort, pack it up. It is over. We got some of the chemical, but we have to go right now."
But Walt?
Walt is Walt. He looks at the meter. They aren't at the target volume yet. He insists on pushing the absolute limit. He wants the full amount they planned for. He outright refuses to stop the pump when Mike tells him to.
This really highlights his greed, doesn't it?
It highlights his greed and his massive hubris. He risks the entire crew, their collective freedom, their actual lives, just for those last few gallons of chemical. It is a terrifying moment of leadership failure, really. He's gambling with their lives because his ego can't stand to leave money on the table.
He is completely addicted to the win.
He is. And they barely make it out. They disconnect the heavy hoses just as the train starts to lurch forward. They have to dive under the tracks into a shallow depression in the earth. The train literally rolls right over them.
The adrenaline in that scene is just off the charts. The sound design of it all, the screeching metal, the roaring engine overhead.
It is pure cinematic thrill. They pulled it off. The truck is gone. The train is moving again. Nobody saw them do it.
Yeah.
They are lying there in the dirt, absolutely covered in dust, but they have the methylamine.
Total success.
The ultimate success. They effectively just stole millions of dollars in future profit without firing a single shot.
For a few minutes there, the show really lets you believe they got away with it. They are dusty, they are exhausted, but they are laughing. It is that classic Butch and Sundance kind of camaraderie. You almost forget for a second that they are ruining lives to get this chemical.
The show deliberately lulls you into a false sense of victory. The music is triumphant, the lighting is bright and sunny. It feels exactly like a fun adventure movie. And that tonal setup is incredibly cruel because it makes what happens next hit you so much harder.
It is the calm before the psychological storm. Because just as the massive engine noise fades away down the tracks, we hear a new sound. A different engine. But not a train.
A dirt bike.
Part 5, the aftermath, the observer.
They notice someone right behind them, stopped on the small dirt bike. A young boy.
Drew Sharp.
Now, we have to connect this back to the very beginning of the episode for you. The source plot summary mentions a young boy capturing a tarantula in a glass jar right at the start of the hour.
Right, the cold open scene. We didn't know who he was then. It seemed completely unconnected to anything Walt and Jesse were doing.
But now we know. He is just a local kid riding his bike through the desert. But he has stopped, and he is looking right at them.
He saw the celebration. He saw the hoses. He saw the huge tank of chemicals buried in the dirt.
He is a witness.
So the interaction happens. The boy waves.
It is such an innocent, normal gesture. He just waves hello to the men working in the desert. He doesn't look scared. He is just a curious kid.
And Todd, he waves back.
Todd waves back. It seems friendly. For a split second, you watch it and you think, okay, maybe he just thinks they're construction workers. Maybe he will just ride away and we'll be fine.
But then comes the shot.
Todd draws a handgun from his waistband and shoots the child dead.
Just like that.
Without any hesitation, without any warning to the others. 1 second, it is a friendly wave. The next second, a dead child falling off his bike.
And Jesse's reaction.
Jesse just screams. It is absolute primal horror. He collapses in on himself. He's completely devastated.
This is the massive thematic shift we talked about in the intro.
It is the ultimate pivot. The episode goes from an adventurous, fun caper, something almost out of a heroic heist movie, to a horrific, totally irredeemable crime in 1 single second.
It is the true cost of the perfect crime.
Exactly. They said the rule was no one can know. Todd took that instruction absolutely literally. To him, the boy was just a loose end that compromised the mission. To Jesse, the boy was a boy.
It permanently destroys the innocence of the adventure. You just can't root for them anymore after that.
You really can't. It forces you, the audience, to confront what you are actually watching. These aren't cool outlaws outsmarting the system. They are child killers, or at the very least, they are in business with child killers.
Let's spend a moment on Todd here, because this is really our true introduction to who he really is inside.
It is. This is the Todd factor we saw in the critical reception. Critics really praise the character development of Todd here, played brilliantly by Jesse Plemons, because before this moment, he was just a background character, a compliant worker bee.
He seemed so polite, the yes sir, no sir guy.
But this one action reveals something deeply, deeply disturbing about his psychology. He isn't malicious in the way a cartel boss is malicious. He's just empty. He sees a problem, which is a witness, and he applies a practical solution, which is a bullet. It's purely transactional logic.
He is the perfect soldier for Walt in a sick way.
He is. And that is what is truly terrifying. Walt has been looking for ruthless competence all season. Well, this is exactly what competence looks like when you strip away all human morality.
Let's pivot and talk about the actual production of this episode because it is clearly a massive undertaking behind the scenes. We mentioned George Mastras earlier.
Yes, George Mastras. He wrote the episode, which is a massive feat in itself to construct this puzzle, but this is also his directing debut on the series.
Talk about a trial by fire. Hey, for your very first television directing gig, here is a moving freight train, a complex heist sequence, and a tragic child murder.
No kidding. The pressure must have been immense. And he completely nailed it. The pacing of the tension, the visual geography of the heist, so you always know where everyone is, it is all crystal clear on screen.
Now, let's talk about the title, Dead Freight.
There is some really interesting trivia here in our sources. The original title for the episode was actually going to be Dark Territory.
Which makes total sense, given the location of the heist we discussed earlier.
It does, but they ultimately changed it to avoid confusion with the Steven Seagal action film Under Siege 2, Dark Territory.
Yeah, good call by the network. You probably don't want that specific comparison being made by critics.
So they went with Dead Freight instead.
And what does that term mean, technically speaking?
The title Dead Freight is actually a fascinating double entendre. In the commercial shipping industry, dead freight refers to wasted space on a vessel that is paid for in full. It is empty space you are paying to transport.
That is fascinating. So if we look at it metaphorically,
what exactly is the dead freight in this episode? Is it the water they pumped into the chemical tank? That is technically dead freight. It is useless weight they are shipping just to hide their crime.
Or is it the boy?
That is the much darker interpretation. Drew Sharp. A body that wasn't supposed to be there. He is literally dead freight carried by this criminal operation. A terrible cost they didn't anticipate but now have to pay for with their conscience.
That connects right back to what Mike said earlier in the season about half measures. There is simply no clean way to do this business. Every single gallon of that methylamine is now contaminated, metaphorically speaking.
Exactly. They stole it to make pure money, but the human cost of acquiring it, the murder of an innocent child, makes the profit spiritually worthless. It is dead weight on their souls.
It is chilling. It really makes you rethink the whole concept of success in this show.
It really does alter how you view their victories.
Let's look at the reception. How did the world actually react to this when it aired back in 2012?
It was huge. The critics absolutely loved it, despite the sheer horror of the ending. Or actually, because of the horror of the ending.
So the audience ratings were solid, right?
Very solid. Watched by 2.48 million viewers live.
And the professional reviews.
Glowing across the board. IGN gave it a perfect 10 out of 10. They called it beautifully crafted and excellently executed.
High praise from them.
Rolling Stone magazine called it harrowing, heartbreaking, magnificent television.
And what about the AV Club? We mentioned them earlier.
An A- from Donna Bowman. We mentioned her specific critique of the Skylar domestic scenes, but she went on to say that the weak patch was more than made up for by the tremendous extended heist sequence and its tragic culmination.
It seems like everyone agreed that the ending was just an absolute gut punch.
Alan Sepinwall, a major critic, called it a devastating but not unfair gut punch. And I think not unfair is the real key word there. It didn't feel cheap. It didn't feel like a shock just for the sake of shock value. It felt like the totally logical consequence of the violent world they had created.
If you bring loaded guns to a train robbery, eventually they're going to go off.
Exactly. You can't control every variable.
And the episode got some serious hardware nods, too, from the industry.
4 Primetime Emmy Award nominations. Outstanding writing for George Mastras, Outstanding Single-Camera Picture Editing, and 2 nominations for Sound, Outstanding Sound Mixing, and Outstanding Sound Editing.
Which makes perfect sense given the train sequence. The sound design there must have been an incredible technical challenge.
Absolutely. Layering the screeching metal, the roaring pumps, the hiss of the gas, all while maintaining the dialogue. It was a complete auditory experience. It fully immersed you in the heavy mechanics of the crime.
And its legacy really holds up over time.
Oh, yes. In 2019, The Ringer ranked it as the 18th best Breaking Bad episode out of the entire 62-episode run. It is firmly remembered as a massive standout. It is the episode where the cool Heisenberg mythos really starts to curdle and turn sour for the audience.
So bringing it all together, what does this all mean for you as a viewer? We have got a heist fakes heist, we have got murder, we have got a train.
It serves as a perfect microcosm of the entire show. It starts with science and ingenuity, which are Walt's quote-unquote superpowers. It involves massive, unchecked greed. And it inevitably ends with the total destruction of innocence.
It is all fun until someone gets hurt.
Exactly. The heist was the absolute high point of their criminal cooperation. They worked perfectly together as a well-oiled machine. And the shooting at the end was the immediate, violent shattering of that fantasy reality.
It is a profound tragedy.
It really is.
I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to chew on. The entire plan, the water displacement, the dead zone, it was all designed so that no one would know.
The literal definition of a perfect crime.
But now they know. Walt, Jesse, Mike, Todd, they all know what happened out there in the desert.
And that raises a really profound question. Does a crime only matter if there are outside witnesses? Or does the act itself rot you from the inside out, regardless of who saw it?
They got away with the money and the chemicals, but can they actually get away with the memory of what it cost?
I think we all know the dark answer to that.
And that brings us back to that final haunting image, the tarantula in the jar.
Right from the opening scene. The boy caught it in the desert. Now the boy is gone forever. And the tarantula is still trapped in the glass. Just like these characters are now permanently trapped by this murder. They are all in the jar together now.
On that very cheery note, thank you for listening to this deep dive into Dead Freight.
We will see you next time.
Keep watching the tracks.